This is going to be some strategies for scenery. So we talked in an earlier video about the placement of the horizon line, and the horizon line makes it so that you're either in the scene looking up, or in the scene looking down, or in the scene looking kind of level across things. So the horizon line is kind of the first thing that we place. And if the horizon line is high, we have a high vantage point. If it's medium, we have a medium, and if it's low, we have a low vantage point. And what happens is when we have a high vantage point, we end up looking down on everything. So we end up seeing a lot of top plane, like a tremendous amount of top plane. And this one, it's a kind of an even split. And when it's low, we end up looking at the bottom of a lot of objects. So let's take that into a sense of outdoor scenery, okay? So if we're working on a drawing, an outdoor drawing, and we did in an earlier lesson, we worked on what it would be like to look at a tree trunk. So let's say that our horizon line is kind of in the middle of this, okay? That's kind of our eye level for the person that we're hoping to view this. And let's give the ground plane a little bit of space. And a thing that I like to do is to create a path along the ground plane, and it can work out that it stays a path, or it can work out that the path disappears. But for the beginning, I like to create a little path along along the along the lowest plane. It's kind of like a path for my eye to follow. And let's take and put a person inside of this so that we can start to orient our viewer. So the first person that I want to put inside this, I'm going to have be about this tall. And we can just use our little robot. So here's a person, and they're walking in this scene, and they're walking towards us. And they have their hands in their pocket. Okay. Now, if we wanted to create a sense of distance, the next thing that we could do is we could put a smaller person back this way. So these two, if they're walking in a situation together, and to get an even greater sense of distance, we could put another person back there. So the same holds true for other scenic elements. Like, say, for instance, we wanted to put a tree in the foreground, and there could be one tree right here in the foreground. And here's a little tree shape for the foreground, and it's going beyond the edge of my composition. And then back here, I could put a smaller tree. This is a tree that goes with, and I'm going to make the trunk of it thinner, and I'm going to make it a smaller tree in general. And then way in the background over here, I want to put an even smaller tree. So we've just assigned a ground plane, and we've started to take objects and drop them into the composition. Now, another thing that we can start to do is if you imagine yourself as looking down on the top of this composition. So imagine we're flying over this composition, okay? And in flying over it, there's one of our characters is standing right here. Another one is standing right here. And the last one is standing right here. And now we've put a tree on the ground here. We've put a tree on the ground here. And we put a tree on the ground here. Now we're free to put other things, almost like plates of glass, like that, going into the composition. So imagine this as a plate of glass, right? So say there's a plate of glass between this character, and this character, and it has something painted on it. Like, let's say it has bushes painted on it. So we have like a big kind of shaggy bit of foliage right there, and it's going to go in front of this tree. And now maybe it could go over this way too. So it's going to partially obscure that guy, and it goes behind this tree. So there's a bush there that goes behind this tree like that. And now we've made the depth, the space of the depth of this composition has become that much more interesting. And let's say that we wanted to put something in to the plane, right? Let's say we wanted to look for something that could go between this character and that character. And what I would think to do there would be some foliage coming down. So let's say it's like some leaf pattern coming down like this, and maybe going over in this way. And so now it goes behind this tree, but in front of that tree. Okay, and now we're establishing even greater depth. And now let's say that we wanted to take something and put it behind that character. Like what we could do, we could go way off in the distance and we could put like the tops of buildings back here. And then it kind of looks like a little bit of a city scene, like he's walking through. And now we've taken this scene and made it like really deep. So let's do that with some other topics, okay? Or how about I'm going to do one a little bigger now. Okay, we're going to start out again with the ground plane. There's a ground plane. Okay, this time into the ground plane, I'm going to start with just a tiny sketch of a car. Okay, so here's a sketch of a car. And I'm just going to use the two boxes to sketch a car. And I want to be seeing a lot more of the side plane of this car, a lot less of the side plane of this car, and a lot more of the front plane. I want the car to be kind of coming towards me. So there's a little sketch of a car. Okay, and now if I stay on the ground plane and I go further back, let's say I put another sketch of a car way back here, only I want to make this one, I need to make a lot smaller. Okay, there's another little car off in the distance. And now say I want to go back even further and put in another one. And I'm going to put in that path, little eye path that I'm so kind of interested in. So now I have these three cars moving along this eye path. And just like before, I'm going to start thinking to myself like, okay, what can I put in between this car and how do I give this car a strong feeling of being in front of that car? What could I do? Because, well, one thing that I could do is I could put a sign back here. So he could be driving past that sign, and I could put a sign up here. He could also be driving past a sign. And I could put in another little sign way back here. Okay, and now it feels like I'm successfully drawing the eye deep into this image. And a thing that might be neat might be to have this sign go all the way behind that car. Although maybe not. Maybe I'll hold off on that. Okay, so now we have 3 cars and 3 signs. This thing is getting some distance in it. And we might then decide we're looking for objects to place between these things in space. We're looking for ways to, and it wouldn't be unheard of to have a tree kind of a tree in the foreground. And I could put another tree over this way between these guys. Maybe I don't need to have it obscuring that sign entirely. Could do another one back here. And we could do some buildings. I could put a building right here. And another one deep in that way. A further one on the other side of the street. Okay, so with our little car sketching and a little bit of pictorial strategy, we're starting to get some fairly deep scenes. And if you wanted to, we could, if you wanted to get this thing even deeper, if we wanted to, we could add a person into the foreground. We could take a person, although it doesn't seem like a place where a person would necessarily be walking, but maybe it's like beside a parkway. But you could take a person and you have to make sure that they fit. But this is what's so great about the kind of robot shaping. It really gives you an easy way to try a person and a composition. So it starts to feel like a scene of a person walking in a city with cars. I think he's too short. I think that the person would have to be bigger. Yeah, that's better. And and then you can also put another person in. Okay, intro to scenery.